A new message in the school group chat. Someone had posted a screenshot from an anonymous account. Tomorrow they'll pay. Every single one of them. Emma's chest tightened. She reached for her phone, fingers hovering over Trinity's contact. She hadn't texted her in months. She had done the right thing, right? For the first time, she wasn't sure. And by morning, it might be too late. The leather of the steering wheel felt damp beneath her grip. Trinity Shockley's fingers trembled, her breath uneven, her heart slamming against her ribs. She could hear it, pounding, deafening, drowning out every rational thought. This was it. Everything had led to this moment. As her phone buzzed, the screen glowed in the darkness, casting sharp light across her pale face. She swallowed hard, staring at the message. The final push, the last reminder of why she was here. Make them feel your pain. Her throat tightened. ShadowFox, the only one who ever understood, the only voice that had guided her through months of rage, loneliness, and planning. He had told her the truth, that people didn't change unless you made them, that the world would only listen when it had no other choice. Trinity exhaled slowly. Her pulse was erratic, her chest rising and falling in shallow bursts. Her hand drifted down, fingers brushing over cold steel. The AR-15 was exactly where it was supposed to be, nestled against her thigh. She had memorized its weight, the way it felt in her hands. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times before, but now, now, she was here, Her reflection stared back at her in the rear-view mirror. Hollow eyes, sunken features, unrecognizable. She inhaled sharply, one breath, one final moment before everything changed. Then, red and blue lights exploded across the windshield. Trinity flinched. The siren screamed, splitting the night open like a blade. Her chest tightened. No, no, no. This wasn't the plan. She had been careful. No one was supposed to know. A voice thundered over a loudspeaker. Driver, step out of the vehicle. Hands where we can see them. Trinity didn't move. Her fingers curled tighter around the rifle. This was the moment. Everything she had planned for. But suddenly, for the first time, she hesitated. Trinity Shockley sat in the dim glow of her laptop screen, the only source of light in her small, cluttered bedroom. The walls were bare, except for a few outdated posters curling at the edges, remnants of a childhood that felt like it belonged to someone else. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, her breath slow and measured. She was waiting. The chat room was quiet, the cursor blinking in anticipation. Then, a message appeared. ShadowFox, you're ready, aren't you? Trinity's pulse quickened. She glanced at the clock. 10:04 p.m. Less than 12 hours until everything changed. She typed a response carefully, deliberately. Trin Reaper. Yes. A pause. The 3 little dots flickered, then disappeared. ShadowFox. Good. No turning back now. She swallowed hard, her hands tightening into fists on her lap. No turning back. Hadn't she always known that? The moment she first stumbled into these forums, into the dark corners of the internet where people like her, people who had been ignored, humiliated, forgotten, found a voice, she had understood there was only one way this would end. She wasn't a monster. She hadn't been born this way. They made her this way. Emma Davis. Her name alone sent a shudder of anger down Trinity's spine. Once, Emma had been her best friend. They had spent afternoons in her basement, whispering about their dreams, their secrets, their futures. But that was before Emma changed, before she started pulling away, distancing herself, pretending she didn't see the bruises on Trinity's arms or the way her eyes hollowed out more each year. By sophomore year, Emma had fallen into the perfect mold of high school popularity. She had new friends, a boyfriend, a life that didn't include Trinity anymore. And when the rumors started, when everyone whispered about the weird girl, the freak, Emma did nothing. She let it happen. Trinity gritted her teeth. She could still hear the laughter in the hallways, The cruel jokes muttered just loud enough for her to catch. Why does she always wear those baggy clothes? Does she even shower? Maybe she cuts herself. Maybe she should. They thought she didn't hear. They thought she was too weak to fight back. They were wrong. Her fingers twitched toward the rifle case beneath her bed. No turning back now. Daniel Carter rubbed his temples, exhaustion settling deep into his bones. The glow of the multiple computer monitors in front of him cast sharp shadows across his desk, illuminating the lines of fatigue on his face. He had seen too many of these cases. Too many times. He had studied the warning signs after it was too late. He had memorized the profiles, the same patterns, the same stories, the same inevitable tragedies. But this time, he had a chance to stop it. The anonymous tip had come in hours ago. A flagged conversation in a dark web forum. A user named Trin Reaper discussing an imminent attack. Valentine's Day. Mooresville High School. Carter's gut twisted. He had kids of his own. A son in middle school. A daughter who had just started high school. Every time he worked one of these cases, he saw them in the victims. He couldn't let it happen again. "Sir," a young analyst called out from across the room, pulling him from his thoughts. "We just got a possible ID on Trin Reaper. Matches an 18-year-old student." Trinity Shockley. Carter's stomach dropped. This is it. He grabbed his coat. "We move now." Emma Davis. Emma couldn't sleep. Something about the way Trinity had looked at her in the cafeteria that afternoon wouldn't leave her mind. They hadn't spoken in over a year. Not since Emma made the right choice, to step away. She had told herself it wasn't her problem. That Trinity had become obsessed with violence, with revenge fantasies, with dark corners of the internet Emma wanted nothing to do with. She had done the right thing. So, why did she feel sick to her stomach? Her phone buzzed. A new message in the school group chat. Someone had posted a screenshot from an anonymous account. Tomorrow they'll pay. Every single one of them. Emma's chest tightened. She reached for her phone, fingers hovering over Trinity's contact. She hadn't texted her in months. She had done the right thing, right? For the first time, she wasn't sure. And by morning, it might be too late. 7:12 a.m. Trinity Shockley's fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The cold metal of the AR-15 lay hidden in the duffel bag beside her, yet its presence felt heavier than anything she had ever carried. Her breath came in shallow gasps, fogging up the windshield as she sat in the school parking lot, motionless. The voices in her head clashed in an endless war. They deserve this. This isn't you. Her phone buzzed, making her flinch. The name on the screen sent a chill through her veins. ShadowFox, her online mentor, her guide through the darkness. You know what to do. No second thoughts. For months, ShadowFox had been her only constant, the only one who had understood her rage, who had fed it, nurtured it, transformed it into something powerful. And yet, something didn't feel right. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She could still back out. She could say, "What? I changed my mind?" No. She had no way out. She had come too far, planned too much. If she walked away, what would she be? Just Trinity Shockley, the loser. The nobody. Her gaze flicked toward the school entrance. A group of students passed through the glass doors, laughing. Her chest tightened. They would remember her. But a small voice in her mind whispered, "What if this isn't the answer?" And for the first time, she hesitated. Carter, 7:14 a.m. Agent Daniel Carter leaned over the desk, his eyes darting between the flashing data streams on the FBI's Cyber Task Force monitors. A red notification blinked. Trin Reaper is active. Carter's pulse quickened. Where is she? A young analyst worked furiously at his keyboard. Still in Mooresville. GPS puts her at the high school parking lot. Shit, Carter muttered. They had intercepted dozens of mass shooting threats before. Most were just empty noise, angry kids seeking attention. But Trinity was different. She had plans, a weapon, a manifesto, and now she had doubt. Carter's gaze locked on the latest exchange between Trinity and ShadowFox. ShadowFox, it's time. They don't deserve mercy. Trin Reaper. I know. Carter straightened. She's hesitating. This was their chance. Get local units on site, he barked. No sirens, no lights. If she sees them, she might act before we can stop her. The room tensed. Every second counted. If they moved too slowly, she'd step out of that car and start shooting. If they moved too fast, they might push her over the edge. Carter exhaled. We have to get to her first. 7:15 a.m. Emma Davis shifted uncomfortably at her desk, the hum of morning conversations around her feeling distant. The weight in her stomach had been there all night. Something was off. She opened Instagram, absently scrolling past Valentine's posts, red roses, chocolates, love notes. Then she saw it. Trinity's latest story. A black screen. 3 words. No turning back. Emma's breath caught. Her mind screamed at her to ignore it, to convince herself it was nothing. But deep down she knew. Her stomach twisted as a realization crashed into her. I should have said something sooner. She shot up from her chair so fast that her desk rattled. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She had to warn someone now. 7:18 a.m. Agent Daniel Carter's fingers hovered over his keyboard, his gut screaming that something didn't add up. The chat logs between Trin Reaper and ShadowFox painted a terrifying picture. A teenager radicalized, isolated, and pushed toward an act of unthinkable violence. But Carter had seen this pattern before, and something about this case felt off. She's not acting alone, he muttered under his breath. The flickering data on his screen confirmed his suspicion. The AR-15 she planned to use had been purchased legally. Trinity wasn't old enough to buy it herself. Someone had helped her. Someone within the town. A chill crept down his spine. Who? The thought twisted in his mind like a knife. Who gave her the means to kill? And why? His phone buzzed. Local units are on site. No sign of movement in her vehicle. Awaiting orders. Carter exhaled. They still had a chance to stop this, if they weren't already too late. Trinity Shockley. 7:19 a.m. The school parking lot felt unnaturally quiet. Trinity could hear the rhythmic thud of her own heartbeat. Her hand hovered over the duffel bag. One zip, one motion, and it would all be set in motion. But something was gnawing at her. Something deeper than the fear of dying. It was him, ShadowFox. For months, he had been her guiding voice, pulling her deeper into the darkness. He had convinced her she wasn't alone, that there were others like her. But what if he was lying? Her phone vibrated. Another message. ShadowFox, it's time. Walk through those doors. Make them pay. Trinity stared at the glowing screen. Her fingers twitched. But then, another message. A single line that made her blood turn to ice. I was never the only one. Her breath caught. That wasn't from ShadowFox. It was from a different account, one she didn't recognize. A creeping sense of dread wrapped around her like a vice. She wasn't alone? What did that mean? Then, a sharp knock on her driver's side window. Trinity's head snapped up. A uniformed officer stood outside, his expression tense. Red and blue lights painted the dashboard. The FBI was here. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the zipper of the duffel bag. She had a choice she was no longer sure she wanted to make. 7:21 a.m. Sir, we have movement. Carter gripped the radio. Do not engage yet. Let me talk to her first. The field team was in position, ready to move at a second's notice. Carter stepped out of his vehicle, his heart pounding. He approached the car slowly, hands raised. Through the glass, Trinity's face was pale, her hands hovering over the bag. But her eyes weren't filled with blind rage. They were filled with hesitation, with fear. Carter spoke calmly. Trinity, we know you're scared. We know about ShadowFox. Her body stiffened. We know you didn't get that gun on your own. A flicker of something passed across her face. Carter took a step closer. Tell me who helped you. You don't have to do this. Trinity's breath was shaky. Then her phone buzzed. Carter caught the briefest glimpse of the message before she yanked it away. Don't talk. Finish what you started. Trinity's face drained of color. And Carter knew. Whoever helped her was still watching. The parking lot stretched out in eerie silence. The morning mist curling around the lampposts like ghostly fingers. The red and blue glow of police lights flickered across Trinity's windshield, casting jagged, shifting patterns over her pale face. The engine of her beat-up sedan hummed softly, its vibrations barely noticeable beneath the pounding of her heart. She could still hear it. The whisper of the wind rattling the Valentine's Day banners taped to the school's front doors, a cruel reminder of what today was supposed to be. Inside, students laughed, oblivious to how close they were to horror. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the zipper of her duffel bag, the weight of what lay inside pressing against her lap like a lead brick. This was it, the moment that would define her existence. But something felt wrong. The messages, the last-minute text from the anonymous account, the looming presence of the police, the suffocating sense that someone, was watching her, waiting for her to make a decision she wasn't sure she could make anymore. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. She hesitated before looking. They're lying to you. You know what needs to be done. Trinity swallowed hard. The screen's glow reflected in her wide eyes. Then, another knock at the window. A sharp, authoritative tap. Her gaze snapped up to meet Agent Carter's. His hands were raised in a gesture of peace, but his eyes were sharp, calculating, reading every flicker of hesitation in her expression. He knew she wasn't working alone, and now, so did she. The cold glow of fluorescent lights bathed the sterile room in an artificial, unfeeling light. Agent Carter sat hunched over his desk, eyes burning as he scrolled through hundreds of messages filled with raw, unfiltered hatred. Every keystroke, every digital footprint of Trinity's descent into darkness lay before him in an endless scroll of despair. The usernames blurred together, anonymous figures whispering encouragement, glorifying past massacres, feeding her rage like gasoline to a fire. And then one name stood out, ShadowFox. Carter's jaw tightened. He clicked the profile, his breath slowing. The messages were precise, calculated, not the ramblings of a lost teen, but the cold, methodical grooming of someone who had done this before. Then he saw it. A new message, sent just 45 minutes ago. A single line. You are not the only one. We are everywhere. His blood ran cold. This wasn't just Trinity. This was something bigger. The room was small, suffocating. The walls plastered with faded posters of musicians she no longer listened to. But they were overshadowed now. Overshadowed by the faces of those she admired more. News clippings, grainy photographs, manifestos printed from the darkest corners of the internet. Their eyes stared at her, hollow and unrepentant. She sat cross-legged on the bed, her laptop resting on her thighs, the screen casting an eerie blue glow over her sunken features. The chat window was open. ShadowFox. It's almost time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Trin Reaper. What if I fail? A long pause. Then, ShadowFox, you won't. Because you won't be alone. She blinked. A slow, creeping unease wrapped around her spine. You won't be alone. For months, she had believed she was a mastermind, that she had built this plan on her own, that her rage was hers alone. But now, a new fear slithered into her mind. Had she ever really been in control? She used to count how many people looked at her in the hallways. Not in admiration or kindness, but in acknowledgement. Proof that she wasn't invisible. Most days, the number was 0. At lunch, she sat alone, her tray barely touched. In the classrooms, her hands stayed down, her voice swallowed by the walls that didn't care whether she spoke or not. The world moved around her, past her, through her. The only time people noticed her was when they laughed. The whispers, the smirks, the passing sneers as they scrolled through her old social media posts, picking her apart like scavengers over a carcass. Underscore freak, underscore psycho, underscore, no wonder nobody likes her, underscore. She remembered the day Emma stopped answering her texts. It started subtly, a delayed response here, a forgotten lunch meetup there. Then one day, nothing. No explanation. No reason. Just gone. That was the day Trinity stopped believing she was ever meant to be part of this world. But ShadowFox had seen her. He had heard her. They don't see you now, but they will. And now, as she sat in the driver's seat of her car, staring at the school doors, she knew he was right. After today, no one would ever forget her again. Carter had been here before. Different town, different face, same sinking feeling in his gut. He still remembered the call that changed his life. The one he'd ignored because he had been too tired, too jaded, too late. The voice of a mother, frantic, begging for someone, anyone, to listen. My son, he's not well. He's talking about hurting people. I found messages. These people online, they're telling him to do things, and he's listening. Please, I don't know what to do. Carter had promised to look into it. 2 days later, that same boy walked into a school cafeteria with a shotgun. 17 dead. He had read through the boy's messages afterward. The patterns, the manipulation, the slow, deliberate descent into something unrecognizable. He had sworn it wouldn't happen again. And yet, here he was, Trinity Shockley, 18, lonely, angry, groomed. This wasn't just some troubled teenager acting on impulse. This was planned. And now, looking through the windshield at her frozen figure behind the wheel, he saw it. The hesitation, the sliver of doubt that meant there was still a chance. A chance to stop her. A chance to save her. A chance to finally make up for all the times he had been too late. The moment she saw the first news alert, Emma's stomach twisted into a sick knot. Mooresville High School, attempted attack thwarted. And then the name, Trinity Shockley. Her chest tightened, a flood of memories slamming into her all at once. She had known Trinity, not just in passing, not just as a quiet girl who sat in the back of the class. They had been friends. She had been to Trinity's house. They had stayed up late talking about music, about dreams, about everything. Until one day, Trinity started talking about things Emma didn't know how to handle. Dark things. She posted rants about being invisible, about revenge, about how she wanted people to hurt the way she did. And Emma had done what everyone else did. She distanced herself. She told herself Trinity was just being dramatic, that she would grow out of it, that it wasn't her responsibility to fix someone else's pain. And now there were flashing lights, FBI agents, a girl in a bulletproof vest who had come seconds away from making a decision she could never take back. Emma's breath came in sharp, panic bursts. Underscore, what if I had stayed? Underscore, what if I had reached out one more time? Underscore, what if I had just asked if she was okay? Underscore, the weight of what if crushed her chest. And the worst part, she would never know if it would have been enough. The moment the FBI agents swarmed her car, Trinity Shockley didn't flinch. The sirens wailed, red and blue lights slicing through the cold February air, but she remained motionless, her hands resting on the steering wheel, her breathing steady. It wasn't supposed to end this way. They weren't supposed to stop her, *M. Agent Carter approached with his weapon drawn, but even as he barked commands, he knew she wasn't going to resist. Not because she was afraid, because she had already won. The door was yanked open, rough hands grabbing her arms, pulling her out, forcing her to the pavement. Someone shouted. Another voice read her Miranda rights. It didn't matter. She barely felt it. Her eyes weren't on them. They were on the phone clutched in her palm. The last message from ShadowFox still glowing on the screen. You did it. Now they'll listen. And as the cuff snapped around her wrists, a small, knowing smile curved her lips. They were too late. Not to stop her, but to stop what came next. Carter stood in the dimly lit FBI cybercrime division, staring at the blank screen. The messages were gone. The account wiped clean. The IP addresses routed through so many proxies that it was like chasing smoke through a hurricane. ShadowFox wasn't just a person. He was a ghost. No name, no face, no trail. Who was he? A lone enabler? A puppet master pulling strings from the darkness? Or was he just one of many? A symptom of something larger, something deeper, something far more terrifying than one girl with a gun. Carter exhaled, rubbing his temples. The case wasn't closed. It was just beginning. The interrogation room was silent. Carter sat across from Trinity, her hands shackled to the table, her face blank. No tears, no rage, just calm, unsettlingly calm. He leaned forward. Who is ShadowFox? She blinked slowly, as if the question was irrelevant. I told you, she murmured. This was never about me. A chill ran down Carter's spine. She wasn't the mastermind. She wasn't even the first. Just one piece of something bigger. Something still out there. Something waiting. The scariest part? This wasn't fiction. This was reality. How many more Trinity Shockleys were out there? How many more whispers in the dark? How many more names waiting to make the world remember them? The real question isn't if this will happen again. It's when. If this story made you think, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's keep the conversation going.